people are finding it all right. And if you are coming in, leave us a comment so we know that you're here. Gives us an indication that you're alive as well. And then I can put your... Ah, it's my cousin. Hello. Love it. Thanks for the comment. That brings me joy. Okay, so I think we'll get going, and then as people join in... Hello, Nicholas. Good to see your comment as well. As people come rolling in, hopefully they'll pick up where we are and see how it goes. So, awesome. So today we're going to be talking about stress management. This is webinar 4. Had a bit of an argument with somebody earlier about which webinar we were on. So I'm glad to see that we are indeed on number 4. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Daniel. My background's in psychology, studied at Stellenbosch University, good old Stellies boy. Then I also was involved in the University of Queensland, which is in Australia, and focused on teaching interventions that teach psychological skills. And because of that work, started a non-profit organization called the Positive Youth Development Foundation. That's where some of the people I work with today, actually I met, including Michael, who I'll do an introduction for in a few minutes, or in a few seconds. And then I was also involved with the American Psychological Association, and those experiences together sort of inspired me to start Psyche Innovations, which I will talk more about in a bit. Good to see you're alive and well, Lisa. Love it. Right, so today we have Michael. Somebody asked me who has the deep, soothing voice in the presentation today, because it clearly isn't me. And I was like, yes, it's not me, it's Michael. So Michael's also Stellies local at the moment. He studied at Stellenbosch University, studied psychology, blazed through his master's, and he's now a PhD student in waiting for the University of, and I always pronounce it wrong, so I'll get Michael to pronounce it for you. He's done Groningen. Thank you, Michael. I always get that wrong. And as I said, he's been involved in the Positive Youth Development Foundation, running interventions in low-resource communities and creating psychological skills resources. And then he's most recently been doing that at Psyche Innovations. Right, so what are we talking about today? I'll just do a brief overview of what Psyche Innovations is and what we do. Then we'll describe and explain what stress management really means. Then we'll talk about 3 different skills. So the first one being stress awareness, then stress management, and time blocking. So we'd love you to leave comments. We're going to ask questions as we go through. Hi, LinkedIn user. Unfortunately, we can't see your name, but good to see your comment. And we'll put some questions up on the screen, and we'd really love for you to engage with them and leave some comments, and then we can pop them up on the screen as well. And hopefully embarrass you a little bit. Like this one right here, a very nice message from Dr. Lisa. Right, so carrying on. So what is Psyche Innovations? We're a digital mental health company that creates evidence-based tools that teach psychological skills. Our whole thing is about having a holistic approach to promoting mental health and wellness, and creating tools that are real-world applicable. So things that people can use in their everyday lives, such as the stress management skills and tips we'll be going through today. So in our approach, we focus on 8 different core domains. So these domains are what make you well. And the great thing about these things is that they can all be improved through building skills and competencies. So today we're focusing on resilience, which is where we put the stress management skills in the resilience domain. Then what else do we do on the app? One of them is we help people become aware of their mental health and wellness. And that can be done through our mental health assessment. And it gives people an idea of how stressed they are, and gives them a snapshot into how well they're doing. So one of my first test questions is, have you actually had the opportunity to try out our mental health assessment and see how stressed you are? I had a bunch of people tell me that they did the assessment and they realized that they were a lot more stressed than they thought. So I'd love to hear what you guys think. How's your stress levels doing? Right. So as I said, stress management is the topic of today. And let's just jump straight into it. Mike, take us away.
Alrighty, welcome everyone. Nice to see the comment section a little bit alive. Hopefully we can brighten it up soon. So what is stress management, right? As we know, stress is a pretty unavoidable part of our lives. But stress management it's a form of using healthy techniques or strategies that can reduce the negative impact of stress on your mind, on your body, and help you cope more under pressure. There are several sort of techniques and strategies that you can use that Daniel will get into later, but that is the gist of what we'll be covering today. So, as I mentioned, stress is this unavoidable part of your life, let's be real, but it's not necessarily the evil character that we make it out to be. It can be very positive in the short term. It is like a signal that tells your body and mind that it is time to get work done. I'm not sure how you all feel, but I know I'm a lot more motivated to work when the deadline's around the corner. But where there's healthy short-term stress, there's also unhealthy long-term stress that we feel long after these deadlines are gone. And this is the core focus of stress management, is focusing on reducing those unhealthy long-term stresses that have a very negative impact on our lives. When it comes to stress, though, it's not always, yes, the size of the stressor does matter. Those big events in your life that really stress you out, but it's also the duration, so the time that it goes on for. I saw a cool analogy the other day about holding a glass of water, which is a manageable task for most people, right? But the longer you hold on to this glass of water for, whether it's an hour, your arm might start to ache and pain. If it's a day, then it's really going to start going numb. And if it's a week, you're probably going to start questioning your life choices, right? And stress really does that to us in the very same way as well. Okay, so now we can just quickly go over the different ways that stress management can improve your life. Now, stress does have an impact on your physical health. Some people experience stress physically, some experience it sort of more mentally. It can differ from person to person, but no matter how you experience it, it does have an effect on your life, right? It can increase your risk of heart problems. It can lower your immune system. You can feel tired all the time. And stress management can help combat these negative effects of stress. Stress management can also improve your emotional and psychological health. So it helps lower feelings of depression and anxiety, often making you feel more in control and happy. And I'm sure you guys have experienced when you really stress, it feels like your mind's going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you often can't concentrate, you can't think. So stress management is also there to help you have a clear mind and stay focused. Can improve your memory, can improve your decision making. When you feel more in control, you aren't going to make impulsive or risky decisions because you feel under pressure. And this can help boost your productivity in your daily life.
Yeah, 100%.
Then it can also improve your... Oh, do you want to add something? Okay.
I was just going to say that when you're trying to manage your stress, focus and thinking is definitely a big one. I'm trying to go through the slides and put questions up and check if there's comments. And I'm like, oh goodness, trying to do all these things at the same time.
Hopefully these tips will be helpful to you too then, Daniel. in real time, in real time.
Yeah, please, Michael, keep teaching me.
All right, then it can also improve your resilience. So help you handle challenges in life better. Life's going to be full of stresses, no matter where you're from, right? Stress does not discriminate. And it can help you sort of bounce back faster from those challenges if you're able to handle them more effectively, which can help you succeed with your career, with work, life, whatever you are invested in. Stress can also put strain on your relationships. So stress management can lead to better relationships personally and professionally. And then it can just improve your overall quality of life, help you enjoy activities more, achieve a better work-life balance, which is super, super important. And I think that's very underrated, especially for people who are still young and building their careers. Well, it doesn't really matter sort of where you are in life, to be honest. But I feel like there's something I experience, at least, is it's easy to justify a poor work-life balance when you feel like you're working towards something very important, right? Which is, not always the case. You can have some kind of balance, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of us carry our stress as like a badge of honor, like, oh, look how stressed I am. I haven't slept in weeks and going gray and it's like this thing that we can use to justify some of our unhealthy habits sometimes. Like, oh, I'm stressed because I'm doing all these big things. And it's a bit of a lumbering weight to carry with us. I see we have a comment here from Kelsey. Experience stress physically as a weight on my chest. I like to call it my elephant, and I try to take small steps to make the elephant lighter. Completely agree. You're really going to enjoy one of our slides later that talks about elephants, so hopefully you look out for that one. But I agree. I experience stress a lot as a sort of a physical symptom. I don't know about you, Michael, how you typically feel stress.
Yeah, for me, it's very physical as well. I can definitely relate to that feeling of like that weight on your chest, right? And also like maybe a more cognitive symptom, like a racing mind. Your thoughts are just all over the place. You can't really focus, and it almost feel like you're like grasping at straws, right? Like you're just trying to manage everything as best as you can, which is not a good approach to have, because we often are reactive to stress, right? We aren't proactive. So we don't ask ourselves questions like what is making us stress, because we're constantly just responding to these different things in our lives. We're trying to address an issue, one thing at a time, or even several things at a time. But it's really important to, be aware of how stress is affecting us. And asking these questions that we have up on the slides is really important. And it always starts with what makes you stressed, right? What is stressing you out right now? Is it, I know it's exam season now, so, is it the potential exam coming up? We had the elections yesterday. Is it what the result's going to be? What is causing stress in your life, right? And it can be a number of things. Then further on, it's important to ask, what about the situations is making you stressed? Is it a feeling of you don't have control over the situation? Is it feelings of, you need things to be perfect all the time? I know that's one I definitely struggle with. A little bit of like perfectionism, right? Or is it that you just have so much going on in your life, right? You really need to sort of think about what is it about that situation that is stressing you out, because that will help you come up with a solution on how to address that. Then it's also important to know, how do you feel when you are stressed? Do you feel that elephant on your chest, as Kelsey mentioned? Do you start to focus on things that are causing you stress, like fixate on them, as Carl mentioned? Like just those. Because once you realize that, right, once you realize how your body reacts to stress, you can start to become more aware of sort of when that long-term stress creeps in. You can become aware of your stress before it becomes a problem, because you can't address something unless you know about it, right? And then also just looking at when do you feel most stress? Is there a certain day of the week, certain day of the month? So for me, and I think Daniel will agree with this, is towards the end of the month, things are always very stressful, right? And it might be that way for everyone. Deadlines start piling up. The 30 days you had suddenly became 4 days. And now you have to get so much stuff done. So that can also help you be more proactive, right? You can start planning ahead, knowing that, okay, these days of the week are going to be really busy. These days in the month are going to be really busy. What can I do to help mitigate that stress, right? These are all really important questions that you should try and answer for yourselves, because that will help you come up with a sort of the best strategy, right? We are really strategizing today is kind of what we're doing in terms of stress management.
Yeah, 100%. And Carl, to your point there, one can get really stuck on, hyper focusing on what's stressing us out, and it takes up all our mental energy. And we'll talk a little bit in the next slide about controllable and uncontrollable factors around our stresses. So hopefully we can talk to that point a little bit more. I just want to pull up Rachel's comment here. I definitely use my stress to justify my poor work-life balance. I sometimes feel that I haven't worked hard enough if I haven't experienced extreme stress to the point of burnout. Damn, I connect with that. I feel like if I'm not suffering, I'm not working hard enough. Like, oh, I'm not on vacation, Daniel. Work harder, work later. So yeah, that's a tough one. I think a lot of us struggle with is. I was interviewing somebody earlier, and they said, they do their best work when they feel they're under pressure. So I think there's a certain amount of stress that, healthy short-term stress that motivates us and drives our behavior. But if it's too much, if it's overwhelming and it's constant, and we have to create this overly stressful environment to get things done, that can also, when it becomes a bit of a challenge, for sure. Michael, controllable and uncontrollable.
Yes, my favorite. So it's kind of in the name, right? Things you can control, things you can't control. And when you ask yourself the question, what am I focusing most on, right? What is causing me stress? For me personally, I tend to find that I stress more about things that are out of my control. Some examples of that, I think that we can all agree on, is load shedding, right? Touch wood. There we go. And it doesn't come back yet, right? We've had a great long stint of electricity, but it's a good example of what we can't control, right? We can't control the weather, right? To some examples, but we need to start investing more time into the things in our life we can control. Okay, so maybe you can't control how the lecturer sets the exam, right? But you can control how much effort you put into studying. Maybe you can't control whether your boss will actually give you a promotion or not, right? But you can control the amount of work and effort that you put in at work. So once we start sort of reframing that and investing, because we only have so much like cognitive energy in a day, right? If you spend that all stressing and trying to sort of manage things that you can't control, you kind of wasting your time as well, and it makes you more stressed, okay? Because things don't really get done. Whereas if you invested energy during your day on things that you can control, you're going to help reduce your stress for one, and you're also going to get better or more positive outcomes as well. So we have this like 4-step plan.
Michael, I'm going to get in there and ask you a question. So
sure.
What if all the things that are stressing me out are things that I actually can control? And I have this huge, overwhelming list of things that's stressing me, like to-do list things. And I know I have this like sense of responsibility. Oh, I have to do all these things. What do I do there?
So in that case, I say it's really important to prioritize your stresses. So to make a list of things that are, either they're really urgent, they're coming up now, or develop some kind of strategy that you can tackle them one by one, because you can't get to everything at once, right? And our skill later on, time blocking, will also help with that, dedicating certain time slots to certain tasks. But you'll need to, I'll recommend prioritizing your stresses. Is that something you've tried, Daniel?
I do. I try to create lists, and I have lists upon lists. And then, sometimes if I feel that something's like a really big, overwhelming stressor, I try to break it down into smaller bits, and then I make it into the smallest, most manageable bit. And then I work a bit at it. And then if I go, oh, I think I have a bit more capacity for it, I try to do a bit more. And if I don't, then I'm like, okay, let's shift to something that's a bit easier to kind of like catch my energy back. But I really love this comment here. It's difficult for someone like me who feels like I need to be in control. I also struggle with that, like a sense of control, like everything's my responsibility. If somebody in my team didn't write something exactly the way I would have written it, then I'm like, oh, I need to go fix this whole thing. And sometimes I just need to let go a little bit, but it's easier said than done, right? I don't know how you feel about that, Michael.
Yeah, no, I think especially when you have a lot going on, and like you said, you feel like everything's important. This is going to sound so bizarre to say, but it's very rare that everything is important, right? And I guess that's how we define important, right? It's either important to you or it's important for some instrumental reason, like maybe it helps you pay rent or maybe it helps with something else, right? But like Daniel said, to really break down your stresses does help into more manageable tasks. It's kind of like that analogy about the mountain. So if you're like staring up a mountain, it's going to be very daunting, right? But the best way is to just take it one step at a time and eventually you'll arrive at the top. So just breaking things down to smaller, manageable tasks, ranking them, seeing what do you need to do first. And sometimes just asking yourself, one thing that I tend to do is I look at my tasks and I'm like, which one am I thinking about the most? Like what's stressing me out the most? And I start working on that one, right? And that can change every day. But as long as I'm working on that one, it does help reduce my stress. And that's kind of step one, right? The awareness of this 4-step plan is becoming aware of what is stressing you out, when you are stressed, and then you can consult your resources after that. So this just refers to like what resources can you consult to help manage your stress, right? Can you talk to a friend? Can you see a professional, so psychologist, a counselor? Maybe there's like a teacher or lecturer who can help you. Maybe you're struggling with some work that you're stressed about. Anyone who can help you, right? Maybe it's an online resource like a stress management webinar. Or maybe it's an app, But what resources do you have available to you? Because there's more than just talking to someone. Nowadays you can find so much information online, so much misinformation as well. So you've got to be very careful. But that's kind of the next step. So once you're aware of what's stressing you out, you kind of need to figure out who can you ask for help, right? Who can help you with this thing? Maybe it's very personal. You don't need to disclose it to a close friend or something. It doesn't matter, right? Just consider all your options. And this is where you start developing or strategizing your plan, okay? So, I know I have access to psychologists on campus that I can go see, but I know that the waiting list is super, super long. But so maybe a friend can help me with this, right? Maybe I'm struggling with something I know. A friend knows how to do it, so I'll go speak to them instead, right? So you start like formulating this little bit of a plan for what you can do to help reduce your stress. Maybe I can take a day off somewhere in the week to focus on this task that's been bothering me for a very long time. Maybe I can put in some hours over the weekend, although it kind of defeats the work-life balance, but just come up with some kind of plan that seems feasible to you. It doesn't have to be the perfect plan, but just so you can have some kind of strategy. And then action is then carrying out that plan, nice and simple.
Yeah. So we got some nice comments here. One from Antoinette. Making a big list of everything and then breaking them down into small priority lists each day. 100%. I try to do the same, but you end up with lists upon lists upon lists, which sometimes stresses me out too. And then which things where, and I try to use digital tools, and then So yeah, that definitely helps. And I try to structure them in, which kind of ties into the last skill that we're going to be talking about, is time blocking and making deliberate time to tackle these bigger tasks. And then I think, once we've actually made those lists, as Michael keeps saying, it's evaluating our resources. What do we have that can help us deal with the stress? Because I think a lot of us, or maybe myself, I forget sometimes that I have resources, that I have friends, that I have people who've walked the walk, and to reach out to them, and say, hey, let's go for a run, let's go for a walk and talk about things. Or, if it's something more specific, oh, I need legal advice. Okay, who in my circle knows things that are, in the legal realm? Okay, let's go ask that person for advice, because sometimes it is instrumental. And then, as Michael was, talking about, you have that plan. You go, okay, I realized, and the person in my circle is Michael. Then it's actually putting it into action, and I think that can be the tricky part. Is actually following through with that plan. But yeah, what does Carl say here? How do we mitigate externals, such as people who might be piling on the stress? Michael, what are your thoughts there?
That's one of the uncontrollable factors, right? You can't really control what people do. You can try and mitigate the stress there, but I think your energy is better invested in things that you actually can control. What do you think, Daniel?
Yeah, like you said, some of it's controllable and uncontrollable, right? So, if it's people, to what degree can you avoid them? Because sometimes avoidance is the best approach. Sometimes it's actually engaging with it, and having a conversation and putting up a boundary and saying, I need some space. Will they respect that? So I guess you have to. I mean, there's no one nice, neat solution to a people-specific problem where they're causing stress. But it's really evaluating, okay, who is this person? What's the circumstances? Is there a power dynamic? Is it my boss? Because you can't handle boss providing stress or causing stress in the same way as a romantic partner or a parent or the neighbors next door. So yeah, I guess the way I do it is I kind of go, okay, well, how do I manage this person? And sometimes it's a quick word and it squashes it. And sometimes it's, well, the best I can do is try avoid them on the street and hopefully they don't bother me, So it is a tough one. I wish I had a nice, neat solution to that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think it really depends who it is and the nature of the relationship, right? Because some people you can have an open conversation to about, what is it in that relationship that's stressing you out? Is it sort of the expectations from like a parent or romantic partner or anything, right? And you can sort of like resolve that between yourselves, where then it is something in your control. But, there's so many examples I can think of where, you might not be able to have a conversation with someone, or where people are just piling stress on you and it maybe doesn't feel like as much you can do about it. And in that case, and sometimes you won't be able to avoid them, right? But that's a very tricky question, because I can imagine, scenarios where you are sort of backed into a corner that can be very stressful, but there might not feel like as much you can do, right? But then I'd recommend, talking to your friends about it, talking to someone about it, and seeing sort of, if that's not an outlet for you to vent your frustrations, to maybe they have like, they know someone who can talk to them or something like that. Consider all your resources, right? Before you never just say like, I can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people can be quite mature, if you articulate and explain how that person or circumstances is making you feel, maybe sometimes we've got to give people the benefit of the doubt, and they'll listen and empathize and be like, oh wait, I didn't really know I was putting this kind of pressure or stress on you. Maybe there's a way we can try and minimize that or reduce it. So I want to talk a little bit now about managing stress. So I think we often wait until we're stressed before we, find a way to manage that stress. And good stress management, a lot of it is proactive. It's the habits, the rituals, the skills, the practices that we use day to day, week to week, month to month in a intentional way, and sometimes in an automatic way, right? Because, for example, when I remember being in high school and I had to study for exams, you lose a lot of the stress management stuff that you could normally do, the socializing with friends. But I appreciated that exercise was something that was super good and helpful for me managing stress during exam times. So I made sure, even if you feel like, oh, I didn't get enough studying in today, or I wasn't super productive or whatever, that I'd still prioritize that exercise time, because it stacks and it adds that benefit. So I put the question to you guys again in the little banner there at the bottom, is what do you do to manage stress? Because there's so many different ways that we can do it, healthy and unhealthy ways. And there's so many different skills that we can use. So there's skills like deep breathing, mindfulness, guided imagery, journaling, positive self-talk. We did our webinar on self-talk, and one of the participants or someone in the audience was talking about how they did positive affirmations every morning, which I thought was, super cool way to keep positive. Progressive muscular relaxation. That's our guy lying down on the floor there. How do you intentionally build in these stress management tools and techniques into your life? And to be honest, it is something that I struggle with, to be very intentional about. I don't know how you feel, Michael.
Yeah, I think, I try and be proactive about it, but I sometimes find myself just defaulting to that reactive state, especially when things start piling up. I think it's very easy just to slip back in and just, trying to process everything as it comes, instead of planning ahead. But I do definitely try and be as proactive as I can, because it does help, right? It allows you that space for if something does go wrong, because nothing's perfect, right? We can't have the perfect plan, and that's not what we're encouraging. But trying to manage stress better can give you that leeway for if things do start going wrong. Then it's not like like when one car hits into another, and then you start having this knock-on effect in the traffic. So yeah, no, I definitely try to be proactive about it.
The thing it takes me to sort of people ask me, I want to get into exercise. I know exercise is good for me. What kind of exercise should I do? And my response is always, well, what kind of exercise do you enjoy doing? What suits you? Because that's the one that will stick. I could say, oh, swimming is, got cardiovascular and strength in, I personally don't like to swim laps in a pool. So, if your thing is, I like to dance, or I like to walk, or I like to lift weights, I use this as a sort of analogy for stress management. If you're already journaling, then build on that, be more intentional about that. If mindfulness and meditation is something that appeals to you, then look at ways to make that more structured, to be more intentional and deliberate about it. If you've done a sort of audit and you from the first slide, and you thought about, oh, what makes me stress and how do I actually manage my stress, and you're coming up blank, then do some of the work and Google and see, oh, there's breathing activities. What's that all about? Because I can tell you, deep breathing is great and it really helps, and I try to use it, especially when you get that real elephant on the chest feeling, which Kelsey was talking about earlier. But it's taken a bit of deliberate intention to make it a practice that I use regularly, for sure. Right. Then my question was, what do you do to manage stress? We haven't had anyone admitting to any unhealthy stress management techniques. Not a very honest group here, but yeah, those are the habits we unfortunately fall into that are learned or environmental. That's the going to the pub with your friends and having too many and ending up feeling even worse for wear the next day, or turning to substances or things that make you feel good in the moment that afterwards leave you feeling worse, right? And we all do that, whether it's doom scrolling on Instagram when it's late at night and we just want to be like pacified, or Michael, I'm struggling here, or eating. Thank you. My goodness, I have turned to stress eating. I have to admit, it's not good. All the sugar I've been eating. If I'm honest, I even have some wine gums here. But yeah, we all have tons of them. Michael, what are you putting you on the spot? What's your unhealthy stress management?
What comes to mind is that thing you told me about the other day, which name I'm forgetting now, where it's almost like procrastinating tasks that aren't important, but it makes you feel productive, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So mine would definitely be be procrastination, to be fair.
Yeah, definitely. I was definitely guilty of that, especially in like early days of varsity. Oh, I got to study. Oh, this is the time I'm going to get a book on how to learn Russian from the library. I'm learning something. It's productive. Or I'd spend like 2 hours cleaning my apartment, or like deep scrubbing something. And then afterwards you're like, I probably didn't need to do that, and I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't avoiding something else.
Binge watch an entire series in in one night.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we can get caught up in that, watching YouTube video on how to do this thing that you're just avoiding. Like, oh, if I watch a YouTube video on how to like go to gym and lift this weight or whatever, but you're not actually doing the thing you need to do. So sure, I'm guilty of that one.
Same.
And then of course there's healthy stress management techniques. And there's tons of them, and they look so different for different people, right? That's socializing, it's meaningfully connecting with people, it's putting breaks in our days between, stressful tasks, it's physical activity, it's doing something that gives your life a sense of meaning and purpose. Thank you for your wonderful comment there to help me, Jesse, as I was struggling. I must remind myself to go outside without my phone and let's put up on the screen there, find even 10 minutes to have a break from anything that could add to a stressful time. Sure, that's great. Being intentional about, getting rid of screen time, running a tech company, building an app, I work on a laptop all day, then I'm on a phone all the time. And being intentional about disconnecting is so important. And I try really hard with that. When I spend time with people, I always make sure that my phone stays in my pocket or that my phone's on silent. And that really helps. Thanks for that comment, Jesse. And then at the bottom there, effective stress management, right? So obviously there's all these different healthy stress management approaches, but effective is, like what really works for you and how can you make it more effective is a big challenge. And I'm curious, I'd love to see your comments. What do you use and what do you feel is the most successful stress management technique that you use? Michael, while we're waiting for somebody to hopefully give us a great answer, what do you use that's particularly effective?
Playing with your pets is great. what else do I do? Listening to some music and just having some like downtime is great as well. Taking a nap. It's also good. I mean, this is something that I quite struggle with as well. And what Jesse said really sort of resonates, because sometimes I can find it difficult to just, when I'm really fixated on a task, my brain's like, oh, once you're done, then you can take a break, right? And then, the stress will be gone and things will be awesome. But what often happens is, the task doesn't get done in that day, and then it just sort of carries over, right? As Carl says, pretending it's not there. But gym, listening to some relaxing music, even while I work sometimes can be great. Or just playing with your pets, or sometimes just taking a nap, right? After a nap, sometimes feel worse, but sometimes just, it gives me like a new perspective when I wake up, which is also really great. And we could all do it with sleep. That's something I definitely struggle with.
Yeah, 100%. I was in the queue waiting to vote the other day, and I bumped into a guy, and we ended up talking about mental health, and his daughter had autism, and how, she's 11 years old, and in her day, she sometimes hits like a wall, and other kids maybe have the energy to get over that wall, and some days she does, and meds sometimes help, but sometimes she doesn't. And I said, obviously you can learn skills that can help give you the boost you need to get over or around or under this wall that's stressing you out. But sometimes it's just rest. Sometimes you just got to sit next to the wall and go, okay, I see you. I'm going to take a breath and I'm going to pace it out. And sometimes people ask me like, oh, Daniel, how do you, study for so long? A PhD seems like such a long, stressful thing. And I was like, honestly, it's trying, managing it, resting, and trying again. It's day after day, just trying to whack away at the thing. And that's what helps you make the distance, right? And that's true for these big, overwhelming things like, oh, I have a sick kid, and I have to look after the sick kid over a prolonged period of time. Like, that's a heavy weight, and acknowledge that it's a heavy weight. And it's going to take time, and it's going to take patience. And sometimes, your best isn't going to feel like it's good enough, and that's okay. It's okay to breathe and catch yourself and be like, okay, well, what are my resources? What can I draw on? Sometimes I need to lean on somebody else for a while. And it's really all about just figuring out this balance. Sometimes we do eat the cake, and sometimes that's okay. Sometimes we eat the cake, and that's how we manage stress, and we have too much sugar. And other days, we're doing well, and we're climbing the mountain, and we're doing this, and we're super mom, and everything, and that's awesome. I think sometimes we can be too hard on ourselves. I end up getting into that doom cycle sometimes of being too hard on myself, and that just makes you stressed as well, which is really tough. And a lot of this takes practice. All of us are living our lives without a manual for the first time, right? We're wading our way through this existence without trying to get too philosophical here, but chat to your friends, learn from each other, learn resources, and try something. See if it works. Maybe that thing you've been thinking about for a while. Going to learn squash or whatever the new thing is at the moment, paddle. Maybe that's the thing that's going to help you de-stress. What does Antoinette say here? Listen to podcasts in traffic about something totally different to my job I do every day. 100%. Those moments of peace that we build into our days can add a lot of value. Yes, there's these skills that we're trying to intentionally teach people, like mindfulness and deep breathing and whatever, but it's these moments of peace and joy that often help us not only survive but thrive sometimes, and we often, after a long day and a hard week or whatever, sometimes it's just that podcast on the way home that gives us what we need, right? Michael, time blocking. We have 14 minutes. Let's go.
Let's do it. Let's time block for the next 10 minutes. All right. So time blocking is something that I use every day. It's very, very, very useful. So it helps prevent burnout. It helps structure your day a little bit more so things don't get ahead of you. And this is particularly useful when you feel like you have a million different things going on, right? And what it essentially is dividing your day into these little segments. And that can be done, there's no hard or fast rule about that. It can be, from 11 in the morning to 12, from 12 to 2, like however you want to structure it, right? You can structure your day into a morning, an afternoon, an evening. And then you have your list of tasks, and then you allocate which tasks go into what time slots. And this helps you stay focused. I'm very guilty of trying to multitask things and it just doesn't work. Like sometimes I'll be working on some application with another tab open where I'm doing something else and like swapping between them the whole time. And that really stresses me out because I get less done that way. But my brain tells me, well, you're stressed about all these things. If you're working on them all together, then that will reduce your stress. I promise you it doesn't, okay? It makes things worse. So I really got to really sort of force myself and trick my brain into, okay, for the next hour or 2 hours, I'm just going to focus on this task. And then I'll get to the other things that are stressing me out as well, right? They'll have their own time slot in the day. And that really helps because I know for the next hour, I'm going to put in some meaningful progress on these things that are making me stressed. And then I know later in the day, there's going to be a time slot for those other things that are also making me stressed, right? But it's not just about those important tasks. It's also about, having a break, doing things that feel like fun, okay? So maybe you study in the morning and then you take the afternoon to go meet up with your friends, socialize a little bit, and then when you get home again in the evening, you continue studying or something along those lines, right? There's many different ways that you can time block in your day, but you really have to be intentional about, and I'm super guilty of this as well. And I don't know if you can agree, Daniel, but we mentioned it in the beginning of the webinar where you start to associate your career and your career goals with like, you kind of place them more important than other things. And then you forget to have fun and you justify that by like, oh, but what I'm doing is really important, right? It's for my career, it's for money, it's for this and that. And then you see fun as things that aren't important, right? It's just like, oh, I'm wasting my time, or I'm watching the show, I could be doing something productive, and you start to feel really guilty, like you guilt trip yourself, right? But we don't realize that those fun activities, the things we enjoy, are really important for managing stress as well. And when you think that way, it's like, no wonder we are also stressed because we're eliminating these things in our life that actually de-stress us to some degree as well.
Yeah, 100%. I just want to had a funny moment today where, you got to try build these fun moments into your day. And I actually had a meeting with an American doctor earlier, really cool lady. And one of my team members, Kaylee, was saying, oh no, she needs to quickly say what she needs to say because she's going to get in trouble. She's taking up too much time because Daniel's going to get annoyed. And it's so funny because, we're having a good time and we're having a laugh and we're learning from each other and listening. And it was lovely. It was an amazing meeting. And then in the back of your mind, you're also like, well, there's also a timeline, like we have to get through certain things in a certain time. So, sometimes you got to just relax and be like, let's have a laugh. Let's enjoy the moment. Let's talk. Let's tell stories. And then let's also try to, make progress towards the thing, chip away at the big tasks. And while I was thinking about this as well, sorry to hijack your time blocking. I have another friend. He's a clinical psychologist. His name's Vion. A little plug there for you, Vion. He said, setting aside time for worrying is apparently a really productive thing. Probably get in trouble for calling it the wrong thing, but let's just call it like structured worrying. And I love that, like, okay, I'm stressed and I'm going to go to bed and I've been busy the whole day, and then suddenly all these stressful thoughts just flood my mind. And his point was that you can actually set aside time and be like, okay, Daniel, now it's time to be worried. Let yourself think about all those things. And then they're less overwhelming, actually, because like Antoinette said, you can write them down. Once you give yourself the space, the breathing room to go, okay, this is how I feel. This is what's stressing me out. Let's write it down. Oh, now it's measurable. It's quantifiable. It's this thing. And it just made me think about that when we were talking about time blocking. Sorry. Keep going, Michael.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with that, because, something that the trap that I tend to fall into is, once I get into bed, when I'm supposed to start going to sleep, is when I start thinking about all the things I need to do. And something that's helped me with that is, at a time that's a couple hours away from going to bed, I sort of structure my next day. Like, I look at all the things I need to get done, and then I sort of allocate things for the next day for certain time slots. And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? If you say 11 to 12 is studying time, and maybe you wake up and things happen, you only start studying at 12, that's fine. You have to be flexible in your approach and adjust as you go. So it doesn't have to be a planned thing. You could be, after this webinar, you could, go on your phone and set a timer for the next hour to study, right? It can be on the go, unplanned, very, very flexible. It's just as effective. Yes, exactly. Doing nothing is quite important. A friend of mine once said this, and it was a while ago, I think still in undergrad, but he like was one of these super like meticulous people, like had a schedule for everything. But he'd also still schedule time to do nothing, right? And he's like, I can do nothing now because I've scheduled it, which is an interesting way of thinking, but I really respected that as well.
I struggle to do that, to set aside time to, maybe it's my ADHD brain. Like, I always got to be thinking about something. And even if I'm thinking about nothing, like, I'm not really thinking about nothing. I really struggle with mindfulness, I have to be honest. And being intentional about doing that. So sure, I don't know how other people manage it, but I know it's definitely super good for you to make that time. And structuring, breaks in your day, in your week, in your month, to take a break, to have fun, to feel refreshed, really is life-changing. And like Anne said, sticking to it. I think that's the biggest challenge, is it's, okay, I've set aside this time to do this thing. Am I actually doing it, or am I now focusing on something that feels urgent but actually isn't that important? Because I think the big things, they can get pushed down and pushed away in place of things that feel more urgent. I don't know how you deal with that, Michael. Are you diligent? Do you manage to work at the long, stressful things and not get distracted by more urgent things that feel urgent?
No, I very much fall into that trap of like, where everything just feels urgent, right? And I don't know if you're all familiar with the is it the Eisenhower matrix? We have like important and urgent and not urgent, important, and all those things, right? And I always find myself in sort of the square at the bottom, where it's like urgent but not important, right? I'm like, how am I dealing with everything in there? But definitely prioritizing can be very difficult, right? But like I said, you have to sort of define like what's important to you. And sometimes, you know, you have to just put out fires. Life's not going to be this perfect sort of space all the time, but we can definitely be more proactive about it. And that's kind of the message that we want to give, right? Something that just popped into my mind now is something my supervisor, Prof. Swart, said. So, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's something along the lines of, you know, there's a time to take your foot off the brake or off the gas, and there's a time to, you know, really step on it as well. And I think that that's a good sort of analogy, because I think his term was, you know, it's a time to be hardcore, which I actually quite like as well. Because you can't be running at 200% all the time, right? It's impossible. You have to allow your times, those times of rest, and then there'll be times of work, and that's part of balance, right? It's balance doesn't have to be 50-50 every day, but it's more about being intentional about, you know, your work time and your relaxation time, and when you need to relax and when you need to work.
Yeah, 100%. Completely agree with that. I like sometimes you have to be hardcore.
Yeah.
And that's true, right? People talk about this, you know, work-life balance. And I guess the balance is appreciating that life goes through these ebbs and flows. Sometimes it is a sprint. Sometimes it's exams and you got to just put your head down. You're doing long hours and it's, you know, not particularly fun. And other times you're on vacation and then it seems ludicrous to study, right? Then you're relaxing. And it's just, you know, having the tips and tools, and you built this reserve of resilience so that when you got to sprint and when you got to be tough, you can, and then you can kind of like dissipate it a little bit. We have those elephants there. It's so funny that Kelsey made that comment about elephant weight on the chest. And I guess the analogy that we really like is, you know, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? That's how you make progress at these big challenging goals, is you time block and you make the time. We are getting through time quite quickly here, so let's read Jesse's comment. I like to set alarms for things that I know are coming up, I need to do in my day, so I'm not worrying about remembering them on top of completing them. 100%. I also struggle with that. Writing things down makes it so much easier, because then I don't have to have that mental capacity of remembering everything and structuring them, you know, accordingly, because some things don't need attention right now. The thing I do still struggle with sometimes is that I pace them out and I go, oh, okay, you know, 2 weeks from now I have to do X, and right now I need to do Y. But the problem I have is I don't always budget the right amount of time for the challenge, because I go, oh, I need to work on the X thing now and be proactive, but maybe the X thing actually doesn't need that much time, and it's the Y thing, or vice versa. So that's something I really struggle with, is like, how do you appropriately block time for those challenging tasks? Michael, do you want to read this one?
Okay, Lawrence left us a nice comment here. I often struggle to recognize whether I'm feeling stressed or excited. How can you turn stress into something more positive? What are your thoughts, Daniel?
Physiologically, stress and excitement are almost identical, which is quite an interesting thing. And it's really about the interpretation of the event. I think sometimes we have to learn, you know, like, because one person will see going up on stage, whoa, exciting, heart beating, pupils dilated, you know, perspirating a little bit or whatever. And they're like, oh, cool, I get to be on stage, I get to perform. And another person's like, oh, this is dread, this is the worst. My body's telling me that it's preparing for danger. So, yeah, I think my supervisor, my past supervisor, we're talking a lot about supervisors, Professor Stephanie Hanrahan. I feel like I'm plugging so many people in these webinars. She spoke about the butterflies in the tummy. And she said that, you know, stressful things come along or exciting things come along, and you feel those butterflies in the tummy. And she said that that's good. And with time, you can learn to manage that excitement and that stress, because you can't get rid of the butterflies, but you can get them to fly in formation. And you can slowly realize that, hey, maybe this thing is causing stress, but this is a good stress. This is an excited stress. The signals around me are going, hey, fun, good time, not in danger. But it takes time and conditioning, right? And similarly, like I was talking to this guy in the queue about his daughter who was autistic, is we have to find the challenge at the appropriate level. I said nobody wants to hear me sing, and I feel, which is not a goal of mine, but I might feel anxious about singing. So, okay, I can't sing to 100 people. What's a manageable goal? Is it 10? No, it's 1. It's my best friend. Okay, let me sing to Michael, and that stress is manageable. And then, okay, I can do that. Let's do 2, and you build it from there. And that allows you to slowly manage how much stress you can handle and what starts to feel positive. Because I think people go, oh, I'm socially anxious, I'm stressed, I can't handle certain environments or certain tasks. So I just avoid, and I mitigate, and I have all these like techniques to make me cope with it. And sometimes it's like, okay, well, what's the minimum level of challenge that you can handle? And try work at that. And as you build positive experiences, you also build confidence. And that is the basis of confidence, right? It's based on positive experiences of things that you can handle. And stress really works the same way. Michael,
that's how you build self-efficacy as well, right? Like doing those challenges, getting to more difficult challenges. Then when you're faced with a new challenge, you might be, start at a sort of higher level of entry, because you're more confident in your ability to navigate these things. But so just to tie off time blocking, it can make your task less big and scary, and it helps you balance those stressful tasks with more enjoyable breaks and times to have fun in your day as well, which is super important.
Exactly. So what did we talk about this evening? We had a quick overview of what Psyche Innovations is and what we do. I encourage you to go check out our stress management tools on our app. We had a brief discussion around what stress is, what short-term versus long stress is, what healthy versus unhealthy stress is. Michael did such a great overview on stress awareness, being able to identify what makes us stress, how we experience that stress, having that 4-step plan of looking at what your resources are and making a plan to manage that stress. Then we went very quickly over stress management techniques, and that a lot of stress management is proactive. Some of it is reactive for sure, and trying to build on the tools that you have and the resources that you have to manage that stress better. And then time blocking. Michael did such a great explanation of setting aside time to break down those bigger, more stressful tasks into more manageable things, putting in your calendar, being deliberate, but also putting in the time for fun, for stress relief. As Jessie said, you can set alarms, you can set reminders. She also, I think, was the one with the great example of going outside and spending 10 minutes, getting some sun rays, and it's really, a lot of these skills are about intentionality, about practice, and putting them into your day. And I think time blocking is such a great way to do that. So on behalf of me, and Michael can say thank you as well, I really thank you guys for your time. I know we went a little bit over, but it's been absolutely wonderful having Michael, and of course having the audience and your comments. We really appreciate it. Michael, any last words?
Nothing from my side, but thanks so much for joining us, guys. Hopefully you got some insights, some practical insights you can use. And I think at the end of the day, remember that some of these things might work for you, some might not, right? For stress management to be really effective, you got to find what works for you. It's be different for everyone. But there are resources out there like ours and it can help you learn at least new strategies. And if you already have strategies that are working for you, then that's great, and keep at it.
Exactly. Thanks very much for your time. Thank you, Len, for your wonderful comment. Thank you, everyone, for participating. We had a great time. The next one is in 2 weeks' time. We have a really cool guest lined up. We hope to see you then. Thanks again, Michael. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.